There are families where the truth is kept in a drawer, and families where it is kept in a box. In my family, it was kept in a cedar box on the top shelf of a closet in a house on Millbrook Road, under a stack of dish towels my grandmother had been meaning to embroider since 1987. Nobody looked up there. Nobody thought to. For 36 years, including my own, the family's understanding of what my grandmother felt, and for whom she felt it was built entirely on what my younger sister Petra said she had been told in private. And for 36 years, I had no reason to dispute it except the feeling, unreliable and inconvenient, that the story did not quite fit. I want to be clear about something before I tell you the rest of this. I did not go looking for what I found. I was not conducting an investigation. I was not trying to prove anything to anyone. I was just a 36-year-old art teacher in Millhaven, Ohio, who had agreed to help her aunt sort through a dead woman's house before it went on the market, and who happened to be the one who climbed onto the step stool in the back bedroom that October afternoon while her aunt was downstairs arguing with the estate agent about the dining room chairs. I found 11 envelopes. They were bundled with a rubber band that had gone brittle and broke the moment I touched it. Each one had a name written on the front in my grandmother Nora's handwriting, which was small and slightly tilted to the left, and which I would recognize anywhere because she had taught me to write in cursive at her kitchen table when I was 6 years old, and she had held my hand over the paper and said, "Slow down, Rosie, slow down. The letters will come if you don't rush them." 11 envelopes. One for each grandchild. I stood on the step stool for a long time holding them. The room smelled like cedar and old wool, and something faintly floral I could not name. The light through the single window was the low pale gold of a late October afternoon, and I could hear my Aunt Vera downstairs saying something sharp about appraisal values, and I just stood there looking at the names. My sister's name was on the 3rd envelope from the top. Mine was on the 7th. I did not open either of them. Let me go back a little because none of this makes sense without Petra, and Petra does not make sense without understanding something about the way our family was built. My grandmother Nora Fairhaven raised 4 children in a 4-bedroom house on Millbrook Road in a town that no longer exists by that name. She was a practical woman who expressed love through feeding people and through showing up and through saying very little that was not useful. She was not, as far as I knew her, a woman who made declarations of preference. She didn't say which casserole was her favorite or which grandchild she was proudest of or who she hoped would carry on which tradition. She just made the casserole. She just showed up. She just kept the cedar box on the high shelf and said nothing about what was in it. Petra started telling the story when we were teenagers, and the story was this: that Grandma Nora had told Petra privately, during one of the many afternoons when Petra drove to Millbrook Road to sit with her, that she was the grandchild Nora felt most understood by. That she was the one who had really listened. That she was the one Nora would miss most when she was gone. I want to be fair to Petra here, because fair is what I was raised to be. It is possible our grandmother said something like that. Nora was 83 years old, and in the slow fog of congestive heart failure in those last 2 years, and she sometimes said things she had never said before, unguarded things that came out rearranged. It is possible she said something Petra heard as a statement of preference. I do not know for certain that she did not. What I know is what happened after. What I know is that the story grew. At the visitation after Nora's funeral, while 47 people stood in a church hall eating finger sandwiches and speaking carefully about a woman they had all loved in different ways, Petra said it to our cousins. She said it to our aunts. She stood near the photograph table and she said, in a voice that carried, that Grandma had told her she was the one, that she had been the most devoted, that she had visited the most and meant the most and would be the most missed. Nobody argued with her. We were grieving. She was grieving. You do not stop a grieving person mid-sentence to ask for evidence. But I noticed. I noticed our cousin Deirdre go quiet. I noticed our cousin Theo look at the floor. I noticed my Aunt Vera give my Aunt Patrice a look I could not fully read, though I understood its general direction. And I noticed, not for the first time, that I was the only one in the room who had been visiting our grandmother every other Tuesday for the last 4 years, bringing her Earl Grey tea in the tin with a dent on the lid, because that was the brand she preferred and I knew it, sitting with her for 2 hours at a time while she told me stories about growing up in southern Ohio that she had never told anyone else, and that none of this had ever been said aloud in any family room. I did not say it. I went home, and I graded my 7th grader's sketches of the human hand, and I ate leftover pasta standing at my kitchen counter, and I did not say anything. I had not said anything for 15 years. I was not about to start at a finger sandwich table. I should tell you what I think was underneath all of it for Petra because I did not understand it then, but I have understood it better with time. My sister had been our grandmother's most visible companion in the last years. She had posted the photographs. She had organized the birthday dinners. She had been present, and she had been seen being present. But I think underneath the story she told was something more fragile than pride. I think she genuinely did not know what her own relationship with our grandmother had been worth if it was not, somehow, the most valuable one. She had learned, somewhere along the way, that love only counted when it could be ranked. That was not a lesson she invented herself. It was a lesson our family had been giving and receiving for 3 generations, handed down without anyone noticing it was happening, like a recipe no one had thought to question. I do not say that to excuse what she did. I say it because I think it matters to know that cruelty is not always chosen. Sometimes it is just inherited, and the person performing it has no idea they are doing so. 3 weeks after my grandmother's funeral, Petra told the family group text that I had been jealous of her relationship with Grandma for years. She did not use those exact words. She said that I had always had trouble accepting when other people were closer to someone than I was, and that she hoped the family could support her during this difficult time rather than let certain people's resentment create division. She did not name me. She did not need to. There were 14 names in that group chat, and every single one of us knew who she meant. I read the message at 6:47 in the morning standing in my kitchen in my work clothes with a mug of Earl Grey. I had not yet drunk. I read it twice. I put my phone face down on the porcelain bowl by the door where I always dropped my keys. I went to school. I taught 3 sections of 7th grade art. I helped a boy named Marcus, different Marcus, not a name from our list. Understand that charcoal forgives itself if you blend with your palm rather than fighting it. I drove home at 4:22 in the afternoon. I made dinner. I did not respond to the group text. The family, to their credit, mostly said nothing in response. One cousin sent a heart emoji. Our Aunt Vera said, "We are all grieving differently." That was it. But the seed was planted the way seeds are invisibly. And over the next 2 months, I noticed the small shifts. A reunion invitation that came late. A question about Nora's china set that was directed to Petra and not to me, even though everyone knew I had been the one to catalog it. A phone call from my mother, short, careful, where she said, "Rosie, I just think it might help if you reached out to your sister," which meant she had heard something from Petra that she was not willing to repeat directly. I reached out to my friend June. We had known each other since our 2nd year of teaching. She was the kind of person who did not have complicated relationships with her own family and therefore had enormous empathy for everyone who did. We met for dinner at a diner on Callaway Street on a Thursday night, and I told her everything. "So let me understand," June said, putting down her fork. "You visited every other Tuesday for 4 years, and nobody knows this." "Vera knows," I said. "Deirdre might suspect." "Why didn't you ever say anything?" "I thought about it. Because I wasn't visiting her to get credit for it," I said. "I was visiting her because I wanted to." June was quiet for a moment. "That's exactly the kind of thing," she said, "that someone like Petra counts on." I didn't have an answer for that. I ate my soup. The diner was warm and slightly too loud, and outside the window a November rain was coming down steady and indifferent, and I thought about those Tuesday afternoons on Millbrook Road, the copper kettle on the stove, my grandmother's hands around her cup, her voice saying, "Slow down, Rosie," and I felt something in my chest that was not anger and was not grief exactly, but was something in between them that had no specific name. The cedar box came to me in October of the following year. I had not planned to be the one to help clear the house. My Aunt Vera had asked if any of us could spare a weekend, and I had said yes before anyone else responded, the way I usually said yes before anyone else responded, because that is a habit that is very hard to break once you have spent a lifetime building it. My cousin Deirdre drove up from Columbus and helped on the Saturday. We worked through the main rooms together, wrapping dishes in newsprint, and arguing companionably about what counted as sentimental versus what was just old. Vera was there intermittently, disappearing to deal with the estate agent and then reappearing to supervise. It was Sunday afternoon, after Deirdre had left and Vera was downstairs and I was working through the back bedroom closet alone, that I found the box.
Cedar.
About the size of a shoebox. The initials NF pressed into the lid in a way that had faded but not disappeared. I brought it down off the shelf and sat with it on the edge of the bed and lifted the lid. Inside was the rubber-banded stack of envelopes, and underneath it a small handwritten ledger, the kind with blue cardboard covers that you can buy at any office supply store, filled with Nora's tilted handwriting. I did not read the ledger then. I looked at the envelopes. 11 envelopes. 11 names. Each one sealed. I sat there for a long time. The October light was going. I could hear, faintly, Vera's voice downstairs, and beyond the window the last birds moving through the oak tree that had been in the backyard of this house for as long as I had been alive. I thought about calling June. I held the envelopes, and I did not move. I thought about what it would mean if I opened mine. I thought about what it would mean if I opened Petra's. I thought about what it would mean if I did nothing, if I set them back in the box and put the box back on the shelf and told Vera there was nothing up here and drove home and went back to my life and kept being the person who stayed quiet. I was very good at that person. I had been practicing her for 36 years. What I did instead was put the box in the passenger seat of my car. I told Vera I had found some old correspondence that probably belonged with the family papers. She said, "Whatever you think is right, Rosie," and went back to the estate agent. I drove home with the box beside me and the radio off and the rain starting again outside the windows. That night I sat at my kitchen table with the box in front of me and my hands around a mug that had gone cold, and I thought very clearly and specifically about what I wanted to do and what I was afraid of and whether those two things were the same or different. They were not the same. I almost did not go. It was a Tuesday morning, 8 days after I found the box. I had spent the intervening time thinking about it the way you think about something you have already decided but cannot quite admit to yourself. I had made a list of the cousins' addresses for my phone, and the Christmas card list my mother kept that I had photographed 3 years ago and never deleted. I had bought 11 stamps at the pharmacy on Cedar Street, one for each grandchild, the right number, not one more and not one less. I had addressed 11 envelopes in my own handwriting, Nora's tilted left-leaning letters echoing faintly in my own, or maybe I was imagining that. I had put each grandchild's original letter inside a new envelope and written nothing on the inside except a single index card that said, "I found these in the house on Millbrook Road. They were never sent. I thought you should have yours. Rosalind Fairhaven." I did not address one to myself. My own letter was still sealed, still sitting in the cedar box on my kitchen counter where I dropped my keys, and I had not opened it. I drove to the post office on Cedar Street at 9:14 on a Tuesday morning with the envelopes on the passenger seat in a rubber-banded stack. I pulled into the parking lot, and I turned the car off, and I sat there for 38 minutes. I did not cry. I did not second-guess the facts. What I second-guessed was the purpose. I sat there in the quiet of my own car in the thin November light that came through the windshield at a low angle, and I asked myself what I was actually doing and for whom I was doing it, and whether the answer was something I could defend to myself at 2 a.m. when the defense would be hardest. I thought about Petra. Not about what she had done to me, but about her face at the visitation, the way she had stood near the photographs and said she told me I was the one. The way I had watched her need it to be true. I understood that need. I had my own version of it in a different shape. We had both grown up in the same house, after all, learning the same lessons about what it meant to be seen. I was not sending these letters to punish her. I was not sending them to win anything. I was sending them because 11 people had been told, in one way or another, a version of our grandmother's love, and not one of them had been told it in her own words, in her own handwriting, addressed by name in her tilted script. They deserved that. Whatever was inside those envelopes, they deserved to have it. I got out of the car. I went inside. The woman at the counter was named Rita, her name tag said so, and she was eating a granola bar and not apologizing for it, which I respected. I handed her the stack of envelopes. She weighed them one by one, told me the total. $14.31. I paid in cash. I walked back to my car. I drove home without the radio on. The first call came on Thursday morning at 7:52. It was my cousin Deirdre. "Rosalind," she said, and her voice was careful in the way voices get when someone is trying to speak precisely because they are feeling imprecisely. "I got the letter." "I know," I said. "Did you read yours?" "Not yet." She was quiet for a moment. "Mine is, Rosie. Mine is 2 pages. She drew a little sketch in the corner of the last page. A cardinal, because that's what I always pointed out to her in the yard. A pause. I didn't know she remembered that. I didn't say anything for a moment. "Did Petra get hers?" I asked. "I don't know. I haven't heard from her." Another pause. Her envelope was the only one addressed to Millbrook Road, though. The house isn't in her name. I don't know if the mail forwarded. I had not thought about that. I had mailed it to the address Petra had given at the funeral, which was our parents' address, because she had still been living there. It should have reached her. "Okay," I said. "Rosie." Deirdre's voice shifted. "She wrote to me about you." "In my letter." "She wrote, I don't want to misquote her, but she said that you were the grandchild she had been able to tell things to that she had never told anyone, and that she hoped you knew that, and that she worried she had not said it plainly enough while she was alive." I was standing in my kitchen. The copper kettle was on the stove. The cedar box was on the counter where I dropped my keys. The Earl Grey tin was next to it. Dented lid. Same as always. I did not say anything for a long time. "She wrote it down," I finally said. "She wrote it down," Deirdre said. By Saturday, 7 of the 11 cousins had called or texted. Not to me, initially to each other. In the side conversations that large families conduct in parallel, the texts that skip the main group thread and go directly between 2 people who trust each other. Deirdre was the one who kept me updated, not because I asked her to, but because she had decided on her own that I should know. The letters were not all the same. They were not a uniform declaration. They were specific, each one, to the person they had been written for. Theo's mentioned the summer he and Nora had repaired the back fence together. Our cousin Marin's mentioned a conversation about Marin's first job that Nora had thought about for years. Each one was 2 or 3 pages. Each one had been written and sealed and never mailed, sitting in that cedar box under the embroidered dish towels for however long they had been there. On Saturday evening, my Aunt Vera called. "Rosalind," she said. "Aunt Vera. I want to ask you something," she said, "and I want you to answer me honestly." "Okay. Did you read the letters before you sent them?" "No." A long silence. "Not yours either?" "Not mine either." Another silence. "Then, she was exactly like that. Your grandmother." Her voice was thick in the way it had been at the finger sandwich table, the particular thickness of old grief reopened. She would have done the same thing. Found something that belonged to someone else, and mailed it before she read her own. I did not know what to say to that. "Petra hasn't opened hers," Vera said. "Her mother says it's sitting on her kitchen counter." I thought about Petra's kitchen counter. I thought about the way the envelope would look there, white and sealed and ordinary, with Petra's name in her grandmother's handwriting, and I thought about what it must feel like to be afraid of what is inside a letter from someone who loved you. "I hope she opens it," I said. And I meant it. I meant it without condition or agenda. I just hope she opened it. "She will," Vera said. "When she's ready." I opened mine on a Sunday morning 3 weeks later. I made tea first. I sat at the kitchen table in the early light. I put the cedar box in front of me, and I took out the envelope with my name on it, Rosalind, just the one word, in that familiar left-tilted hand, and I sat with it for a few minutes before I broke the seal. It was 3 pages. She had drawn nothing in the corners. She had just written, in the careful economical way she wrote everything, what she wanted me to know. I will not tell you everything it said. Some things are not for telling. But I will tell you this. She knew. She knew about the Tuesdays. She knew what we had talked about. All those winter afternoons, the copper kettle and the cardinals and the stories she had never told anyone else. She knew I had never told anyone we had them, and she wrote that she had understood why, and that she had loved me for it. "You have always been the one who keeps things," she wrote, "and I want you to know that I have kept you too, Rosie. in the only way I knew how. I finished reading the letter. I folded it back into the envelope. I put it back in the cedar box, and I carried the box to the shelf in my own bedroom closet, the high one, and I put it there. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, and I stayed very still for a while. Some truths do not need to be performed. They do not need to be announced. They do not need to be posted or declared or confirmed by a room full of witnesses. Some truths just need to exist, quietly, between the person who felt them and the person who was felt. My grandmother understood that. I had always understood it too, in my bones, if not always in practice. We were the same kind of person, it turned out, in the way that only shows up clearly after someone is gone. Petra called me 6 weeks later. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was grading watercolor studies, the kind where a 12-year-old discovers for the first time that colors bleed into each other whether you want them to or not. I read it, she said. I know. A long silence. She said she was sorry she'd never told me that the comparing wasn't her, that it was something she'd absorbed from her own mother and passed on without meaning to. A pause. She said she was sorry about that. I let that sit for a moment. I'm glad she told you, I said. Rosalind, Petra said, and her voice had something in it I had not heard from her in a long time, something thin and true. I didn't make it up.
What she said to me.
But I think I built a lot more on top of it than what she actually said.
I did not say I know again.
I did not say yes you did. I said, I believe you. That was enough for that conversation. We didn't talk long. We haven't returned to what was between us in one clear, direct conversation, and I don't know if we ever will. But there is something different now, the way a room feels different after someone finally opens a window that has been stuck for years. The air has not changed, but it moves. I still see my therapist, Dr. Lena Souza, every other Thursday at 4:30 in the afternoon. She asked me once, a few months after all this, what I thought I had been holding on to all those years by staying quiet. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I think I believed that if I said it out loud, I told her, it would mean I needed it to be acknowledged. And I didn't want to be the kind of person who needed it. She looked at me. And now? I thought about the cedar box on my bedroom shelf. I thought about 11 envelopes and Nora's tilted handwriting and the way the truth had waited, sealed and specific, for someone to carry it to the right address. Now I think, I said, that needing acknowledgement is not the same as demanding it. You can need something and still give it to yourself quietly. Some things are not meant to be announced. They are meant to be kept until they are ready and then given to the people they were always intended for. A family will spend decades arguing about who is loved most when the evidence was sitting in a cedar box the whole time, waiting for someone to climb up on a step stool and look. Love that has to be performed loudly is not insecure love. It is afraid love. And afraid love will say almost anything to keep from having to sit alone with the question of whether it was real. Forgiveness is not reunion. Understanding what someone was afraid of does not require you to pretend they did not hurt you. You can hold both the clarity of what happened and the compassion for why, and still keep the window open only as far as feels right. What my grandmother understood, and what took me 36 years to understand, is that the truest things rarely need an audience. She wrote 11 letters she never mailed. She kept them in a box. She trusted that the right person would find them at the right time. I do not know if she knew I would be the one to climb up on that step stool, but I think she would have been unsurprised. Some people keep the truth their whole lives, not out of cowardice, but out of a belief that it will find its way when the time is right. That patience is its own kind of love. If you have ever been the one in your family who kept things, who showed up without announcing it, who gave without posting it, who loved without performing it, I want to ask you something. What would it mean if the people you loved had written it down, had sealed it, had trusted it would reach you? Do you believe it already has?